Hello, I'm Dickie Arbiter in London.
And I'm Victoria Arbiter in New York. Welcome to another episode of Royal Report. It's been 1 year since King Charles acceded to the throne, and inevitably, along with such an anniversary, there have been a number of pieces published by various newspapers around the world reflecting on the first year of his reign. And there's been a fair bit of negativity, people suggesting it's been a challenging year, it's been a difficult year, he hasn't achieved everything that people thought he might have done by this point. But I beg to differ. Of course, it's been a difficult year for him personally, in the sense that he is grieving the loss of his mother so soon after the loss of his father. He's also taking on an enormous job at a relatively elderly age. He turned 74 not that long after his mother passed away. He'll be 75 in November. But I think really we have to give credit to King Charles. He has defied his critics. He has overseen a remarkably smooth transition from mother to son, which is why it's also quite ironic to see people suggesting that he hasn't done everything he set out to achieve. What could people possibly have imagined he was going to achieve in the first year, where we're also trying to acknowledge the Queen and be respectful in terms of the passing from mother to son? There have also been a number of polls in recent days claiming that young people don't like King Charles. Young people think the monarchy is an archaic institution that is past its sell-by date. And this is particularly ironic because King Charles has spent almost his entire adult working life championing young people. He has been preaching the dangers of plastics long before anyone else. Why? Because he was trying to preserve this planet for future generations. He was talking about religious intolerance and about the importance of communities working side by side. Why? Because he wanted to ensure safer, more inclusive communities for future generations. But even more so, the Prince's Trust, which he started with his pension from the Navy many, many moons ago in the 1970s, has gone on to become the leading youth charity in the UK, and it's one of the biggest fundraising organisations in the nation as well. All of his work has been about promoting and achieving initiatives for young people. So, Dad, I would love to throw to you because you saw him as Prince of Wales. You were working with him as Prince of Wales. You saw that work on behalf of young people firsthand. So how do you think the transition has gone?
I think the transition has gone extremely well. You know, people criticise and say he hasn't achieved. Do they know what he wanted to achieve? Did he say what he wanted to achieve? No, no to neither of those. So quite frankly, when you talk about young people not interested in him, I think you'd be very surprised at the number of young people that are interested in him. And when I was working for him, I worked for him for 5 years as his press secretary. And one of the things the Prince's Trust used to do is take over Caister Camp, which is outside Great Yarmouth on the east coast of England. And they would take it over for a week with 70 or 80 young people. These were young people who came from broken homes, they were unemployed, they were homeless. Young offenders were actually put into the custody of the Prince's Trust on licence. And they'd arrive on a Monday, surly, totally uninterested in what lay ahead. They didn't know what lay ahead. And my goodness, in 5 days, they were all working together as a team. And after the 5 days, on the Friday, the Prince of Wales, as he was then, would visit the camp. And he did this every year. One occasion, Frank Bruno was there, and he sparred with Frank Bruno. That went down a bomb with the youngsters. Another year, Phil Collins was there with his drum kit. The Prince sat behind the drums and bashed out the drums. I don't know even though what he thought he was doing, but it sounded awful. But the kids loved it, and they loved him. They swarmed around him, and he had so much time for them. So for people to suggest that young people are not interested, it depends who you talk to. You know, these opinion polls, they have an agenda. They have a set of questions. They're talking to 2,000 people. Are they representative of 70 million people who live in the United Kingdom? Of course they're not. A recent poll suggested that, and it was a YouGov poll, which is quite an important poll, suggested that 59% thought the king was doing a good job, and 17% didn't. So that's a healthy response. It sort of makes the those that be in the royal circles, the aides, think about, well, are we getting anything wrong? Quite frankly, to suggest young people don't like him is a nonsense. Look, in the UK, we don't go round with a photograph of the monarch on our button badge. We don't go around talking about the monarch. We're there on major occasions like the Silver Jubilee, the Golden, the Diamond, and the Platinum. Yes, we turn out for things like that. We turn out for major occasions, but we don't talk about the royals. So to suddenly go out and ask questions about the royals, of course, people are going to say what comes into their head immediately. And are they saying what they really want to say, or are they just being controversial for the sake of being controversial? Victoria rightly says Prince's Trust, they've helped over 1 million youngsters. They get in over £100 million a year in donations to help young people. Idris Elba, there's a name I throw at you. Actor, well-known actor, he's over 50 now. He's been in so many smash hit movies, smash hit television series. He got a loan from the Prince's Trust, a grant actually, not a loan, £1,500 to send him off to drama education, not a drama school. He wanted drama education, and that paid for it. There have been DJs who've had money. There have been young entrepreneurs who've had money. There was one in Scotland whose name escapes me, who set up a butchery, had a great idea. He now has a string of butchers. He now contributes to the Prince's Trust. Young entrepreneurs get soft loans where banks and building societies would not give them a penny, and yet the Prince's Trust has faith in them. So the Prince's Trust is there for young people. There are those critics who say, well, they're doing what the government should be doing. Governments can't do everything. Charities do what governments can't do, and they do it damn well. Many times I was asked, and you'd be surprised how many times I was asked when I worked there, will Charles make a good king? Well, he was a damn good Prince of Wales, and he'll be a damn good king.
Throughout his tenure, though, as Prince of Wales, and he was the longest serving heir apparent in British history, so with that comes a large degree of wisdom, I think. But throughout his tenure, people were quick to say he's going to be a reformer king, a radical king. He's going to dabble in politics. He's going to cross lines that he's not supposed to. He hasn't done any of that. So it almost feels like people are trying to find the negative. What hasn't he done? Now, just this week, I saw there was one commentator on television who said, well, he hasn't opened up Buckingham Palace in the way that we thought he was going to. What they may forget is that Buckingham Palace was open for its traditional summer exhibition as normal, but it's undergoing an enormous restoration. It can't just be opened to the public. And I think this is a huge part of the problem. People think, well, you just come along and just do X, Y, Z, but it doesn't work that way. There are checks and balances that have to be put into place. But let's talk about what the king has achieved. And I'm going to my notes for this because it really is extraordinary when you think of his age, the fact that he's been grieving both of his parents, the fact that he's had private family things to deal with as well. But we're talking about 161 days of engagements, all of those with multiple engagements. He conducted more than 550 engagements, traveled to all four corners of the UK. He undertook myriad official audiences. He oversaw the coronation. He went on a state visit to Germany. He's shortly going to be the first monarch to address the French Senate on the floor. They respect him enormously in France. He spent shorter spells at each of the royal residences because he's hit the ground running. And I think it's been particularly interesting because, of course, in the latter years of the Queen's reign, there was COVID to contend with, but also her mobility issues meant that she wasn't able to be out and about in quite the same fashion. So I think people are enjoying seeing a monarch out and about. And he's had a slightly more relaxed approach, let's put it that way. People respected the Queen enormously, but no one was going to reach over the barrier and plant a kiss on her cheek. They're doing that with King Charles, and he's embracing it. He's welcoming it. He's asking lots of questions. His walkabouts are taking ages because he's really interested in people. He wants to help them. He wants to know what he can do to further positivity in their communities, in their lives, in their job backgrounds, whatever it is that they're doing. And that's what I've enjoyed seeing, is this sense of humor coming across, this relaxed approach that is still very respectful of the institution that he heads. And I think perhaps, just thinking back to my childhood and you coming home, you were always very respectful. You didn't divulge what had happened at the office. But my sense was that you had a Prince of Wales who was a workaholic, someone who was determined to make a difference, but he really wore the weight of his position on his shoulders. And you would think he'd be feeling that as king, and I'm sure to some degree he is, but we've got a much more relaxed man today. Maybe that's age, maybe that's wisdom, maybe that's finally occupying the position for which he was born. But I'd love to hear your thoughts in terms of the man that you worked for and the man that we are seeing today undertaking probably the most important role of his life.
The man I worked for, as you rightly say, was a workaholic. He was a workaholic then, he's a workaholic now. And what is quite interesting, you rattled off all those engagements he's been doing. What is not known, because people don't know it's happening and it's not reported in the court circular, in the Telegraph, in the Times, or online, is the work behind the scenes, the administrative work. He'll get 2 or 3 boxes, red boxes a day, which will contain government papers that need to be read, government papers that need to be signed, papers from the realm states. There are 14 others, plus the UK. He will get correspondence that needs to be answered. He won't answer every one of them, but he might answer a few, the rest answered by the private secretary. So there is a lot of paperwork that he's got to get through, and that takes up a lot of time. And this is not just 1 day a week. This is 7 days a week. As Prince of Wales, boxes as king, he gets red ones. When he was Prince of Wales, they were blue ones. They were overflowing. He would get 6 or 7 boxes of varying sizes every single day. He had so many charities. He was involved in so many organizations. They all want a piece of the action. He gave them a piece of the action. This is why he worked well into the night. I remember I used to receive phone calls from him in the late hours and the early hours of the morning. He was still working. He'd fall asleep at his desk at Highgrove. I remember when we got back from Brazil, he went straight to play a game of polo at Cirencester, and I went with him. And there was a phone call for him. Switchboard called my phone, which was in the car, in the early days of mobile phones. Is the Prince of Wales there? Yes, he is. Could you call him to the phone? Because there's a call for him. And I had to interrupt the polo match and say, there's a call for you, sir. And he took the call. So he worked 7 days a week. And if there were 8 days, he'd work 8 days a week. So there's a man who not only devotes himself to the people, to engagements around the United Kingdom. When I talk about the United Kingdom, I'm talking about England, Scotland, Wales, Northern Ireland. And we've seen a state visit. We've got another state visit coming up. That he really devotes himself to the work. He puts his heart and soul in it. And he's lucky he's got Camilla by his side, because she calms him down and he's able to relax between engagements. He was able to bounce ideas off her. He's able to give her queries. Maybe she knows the answer to something that he was asked. So he's a very much calmer man today. In the old days, he'd lose his temper quite quickly if something went wrong. It didn't matter how minute it was. If it went wrong, he'd explode. And that's the way the man operated. So we've got a man who is devoted to the job. Yeah, he had a long apprenticeship, 56 years, and he's finally there. And as Victoria said, he hit the ground running. He hit the ground running when he returned to Buckingham Palace the day after his mother died, and he hasn't stopped running.
I'm so glad you raised the red boxes and just the business of monarchy, because you're right, that's not what people see behind the scenes. So the anti-monarchists are really quick to say that he's off having a jolly if he's gone to the opera, but they're not thinking about all the research he's had to do about the people he's going to meet, and he's got to be briefed about what charity it's in aid of, who they're raising money for, who the people are that he has to make a point of speaking to, that he may have had an engagement at 8 o'clock in the morning and the opera is going until 11 o'clock at night. So people forget that and forget how difficult it is to do when you are a certain age as well. Most people of his age have retired at this point. The Queen, the late Queen, always used to say that she did a documentary and she talked about the fact that the red boxes just keep coming and coming. And correct me if I'm wrong, but Christmas Day, she said, was the only day that she had free from the red boxes. It just meant there was double to contend with on Boxing Day.
Only Christmas Day. That was the one day of the year that she didn't do boxes. The rest of the year, boxes every day. Didn't matter where she was, whether she was in Australia, in the United States, in Scotland, the boxes were there every single day. There'd certainly be one first thing in the morning, probably be one at lunchtime and another one in the evening. She turned them around very quickly. I used to send up notes to her requesting to do certain things. If I sent a note up in the morning, it would be back with me by lunchtime, a yay or nay. I'm pleased to say 99.9 times out of 100, they were always yes.
Obviously, the first year of his accession there's been a lot to consider with the coronation, which he had to oversee, and striking the balance of what was correct today versus the ceremony held in 1953. I think also the king has been very keen to pay respect to his late mother throughout the year, not wanting to sort of bulldoze and change anything too dramatically. He clearly has a very astute understanding of the need for continuity and tradition. But again, with the royal family, people don't perhaps understand, those who don't follow it quite so closely, that any changes that happen are very slight and very small and very gradual. And the reason the monarchy continues to exist today is because of its ability to adapt and evolve. And that's what the king will continue to do. And I think it's unfair that a number of people have been referring to him as the caretaker king, that because his reign is going to be significantly shorter than his mother's simply because of his age, that he's just sort of a placeholder there until King William V takes the throne. And I think that's unfair because he was never going to come in and just turn the entire institution on its ear and just change how everything's done, because he recognizes what works. That's what foolish CEOs do when they go into a new job and they turn it upside down and then it all goes wrong and they end up getting fired. This man is in it for the long haul. And so I think, too, I would love to hear your thoughts on knowing what he brings to the role. I've always thought it a little macabre that you take on the job for which you were born because a parent has passed, and people forget that royals are human beings as well, and that he will have been grieving this year. But now perhaps we'll start to see other changes, other work really come to the forefront as he seeks to make his own mark. And so I wonder what you think he would hope his legacy would be many years from now.
It's a bit premature to start talking about legacy many years from now. I wrote a piece recently saying that William would be William V, and his term will come in 20 plus years time. So let's address that one nearer the time. I'm glad you used the word evolve with the monarchy. I remember years ago talking to the Queen. It was at a lunch. It was a private lunch. And we were talking about change. I was saying that, the media are calling for change. And she said, I don't change, I adapt. And that's what the monarchy has done. It has adapted to meet the needs of the day. And the media used to call, the monarchy's got to change. They didn't come up with any ideas. They didn't say how it was to change, what it was to change into, sort of hobgoblins or what. But the Queen just put it absolutely right, saying, I adapt to meet the needs of the day. And what happens is you do see change, but it is seamless. And you seem to think, well, hang on a minute, she's always done that. No, she hasn't always done it. She's done it fairly recently, but you haven't noticed. And that's what the monarchy is all about. It adapts.
We'd love to hear your thoughts on King Charles. What do you make of his first year as king? What would you like to see him achieve down the road? What do you think have been the moments that are perhaps the most successful of his tenure so far? Please use the comments section below, and remember to click like, subscribe and ring the bell. Subscriptions are free, and that way you will never miss another episode. We look forward to seeing you next time on Royal Report.